Welcome to my channel. Time for Bitcoin.
I asked many people who were like, I hate the Fed. I'm like, okay, 2008, what would you have done? Well, I wouldn't have got there in the first place. I'm like, okay, but they did. And how do you get there in the first place? Well, that was a factor of globalization. Would you have stopped that and foreseen the outcome of that? And then that was a function of the baby boomers and World War II. And there's so many factors. It's like, no, they're doing the best that they can. Now, nobody wants the debasement of currency, but if you don't, what is the outcome? That's what I ask people. If you don't buy the debt, if you allow the collateral of the system, because the US is the most indebted economy in the history of the world as a percentage of world GDP. It's over 100% of world's GDP in debt. And that's not just, that's the country, the people, the corporations, right? It's the whole lot, the total debt. So what do you want to do? What do you want to do? Do you want to let all of that collateral go to zero, the whole system burn to the ground, and a complete destruction of lifestyle, even whether we're living in a fancy lifestyle driven by debt and other stuff? Do you want to destroy all of that? I don't think you would. I don't think anybody would. So in which case you need the central banker to try and just juggle the bloody balls in the air. And yes, we get angry because it kind of gets the rich get richer because it keeps driving those assets up, and the poor get poorer. So we have to focus somehow on that. But America doesn't like the idea of helping poor people. I think it seems to be, you're a communist. It's ridiculous. You know, why would you not have a welfare state if you've destroyed the ability for wages in real terms to rise over the last 50 years? They've not risen at all. So you need to think about this, and this is why technology people are thinking about universal basic income, because these same people in the workforce are going to compete against robots and have no chance, zero chance. So there is a lot of structural issues here, and I don't think you can do this without government. And I don't think you can do it without central banks. And I don't think central banks, they've made some mistakes, some big mistakes. They made a mistake in 1997, which was cutting interest rates to defend the stock market. The leverage hadn't built as big by then, and we could have had a clearing event, and the leverage wouldn't build up. That's what's happening in crypto, right? The leverage can't build up. It just cannot do it because it keeps getting blown out. Why? Because there's no counterpart. But look at how vicious the cycles are. So do you want the whole economy to go through the crypto cycle? Well, you can do that. That's not having a central bank. There's so many trade-offs as you suggest. So I think for a generalized population, you would trade smoothness and some level, acceptable level of debasement or inflation, whatever you're looking at, some acceptable level, versus an economy that does this, and you don't know when to save or how to invest. So one of the arguments about the Fed that people have is they're not elected officials. And therefore we should have a say how much our currency gets debased or whatever. But the crowd is not always very good at making these decisions either. I think they do a terrible job on forecasting the economy. And that's why, you know, FinTwit gets so angry with them. It's like, it's bloody obvious we're going into recession and you won the battle on inflation. But you're going to keep fighting it and you're going to make it worse for people. And then people are going to lose their jobs and going to be angry at you again. And so on and so forth. But nobody's ever managed to make the business cycle flat. Nobody. The UK lost a huge amount of its buffer because it basically shut shop on immigration. GDP growth is actually a pretty simple formula over time. GDP growth is population growth plus productivity. If you've got an old population, you don't have any productivity because they don't work. And an old population means your population shrinking, so your GDP goes down. So Japan has suffered that, and what happens generally is that's offset by leverage. People add debt. So Japan is the older population. They do have more productivity because they've got industry there, and the industry can become productive over time. The UK's got no industry left. It's just a service economy. There's nothing left. And because they've now knocked themselves out of the EU, I could be a guy who manufactures tiles and I could sell them to some, guy in Paris, some construction firm in Paris. Can't do it anymore without taxes. So you've completely ruined that. So all of their levers now are basically devalue your currency. They've got very little room for maneuver. The Japanese have had a lot of room for maneuver because the population saved so much money because they have a system of saving. The Brits, like the Americans, have a system of debt. It all came from, actually, Margaret Thatcher and Ronald Reagan is where it all came from. But the Japanese are slightly opposite, so they kind of manage their economy better. So they don't have violent swings. It just doesn't grow. It just doesn't go anywhere.
Raoul Pal in this episode talks about the future and how artificial intelligence and technological progress can make human work no longer useful. This will cause the technological giants to use robots, and the average person will be out of work. What future awaits us then?
They can't create inflation. Why? For the same phenomena we talked about. There's a bunch of 80-year-olds, a massive amount of them, who are like, I just need to have enough money to live on for the rest of my days. And I'm Japanese, so I might live to 100. So I retired at 70. I've 30 years of money. I mean, most people find it hard enough to save for a bloody house deposit. How do you save for 30 years of living without a job? And what does that do for your psychology and your spending habits? It's huge. And people forget all of these kind of bigger picture equations. So Japan didn't allow their interest rates to rise because they've used a lot of debt to keep everything going. They allow the interest rates to rise, it causes a bigger problem. So you kind of slowly have to devalue, or you do it all in one go, which is nobody can pay the debt. So what they chose was actually quite a rapid devaluation of currency by fixing bond yields at 0.2%, while the rest of the world was seeing bond yields at 4%. And the central bank said, no, they're not going. We're just going to buy every bond you try and sell us, until there was no liquidity left in the bond market, and the bond market doesn't even trade. And this is the second most indebted economy in the world. And the bond market stopped trading because the Japanese central bank bought all the bonds. But what it meant was the currency collapsed, because you're debasing your currency by that quantitative easing route, which is you're basically printing money to buy bonds. That's what I think the solve is. I think the fourth turning as technology solves this. Because the logical conclusion of world population growth, which is essentially going to zero, so the birth deaths rate of the entire world is like 1%, something crazy now. So yes, populations like India and the Middle East are very young, but they've all stopped having kids. So the whole world is going through the same cycle on a lag, with Japan at the front, then Europe and South Asia, South Korea, Taiwan, all the same. Then the US, then Latin America, then Africa, the Middle East, and India. So all population is going to collapse, which is what Elon Musk keeps talking about. And the solution to that is technology, i.e. you need to create productive units with less people. And this is why we need a distribution of capital. Now, there are ways, and I think crypto is one of them, which means that we can participate in these communities and get paid in a reward system for being a community-driven person that's good for the community. So that is where we're seeing it in Reddit, where we start seeing this nexus between social tokens and NFTs, creates an economy in your cultural community. And so I can be a good actor and I can get paid in an asset that has value and a system of money that has value to me that may be fungible with the outside world. That is, Yatsui calls it universal basic equity. And I think that's right. But the universal basic income side is going to have to be solved for the exact reason is I am not doing a job and earning the money myself. The robot or the AI is doing the job. Now, can I monetize my digital identity? So I participate in the advertisers doing that, or in the network, and I attach myself to a network where I get monetized. Do I get share that? Yes. So that's a free market form of universal basic income. But yes, we have to solve this, because if not, there's going to be a few people who are going to be so ridiculously rich the world has never seen anything like it. We're already seeing that, and we've got a big problem. But that's not the bigger problem. The black mirror is clearly, because AI is accelerating so fast as our robotics, there's no need for humans at all. So there's two parts of this, and it's the phase that is almost inevitable. One is that at first we become augmented humans. So we use the AI. So I use Grammarly, right? That's augmented AI to make me a better speller because I'm pretty ADD and I can't spell anything ever. So it helps me. Okay, that's augmented human. And that will become much bigger. But obviously in the end, we don't need humans.
This is a bit scary. What do you think about the near future and how to solve the problem of the lack of usefulness of people in the future? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for staying until the end. Please like and subscribe if you appreciate my work.